Hey guys, my name is Shai and this is the video for Black Moon Lilith in Libra, and it's going to be a little bit different. It's probably going to be a little bit longer, and that is because this is my placement. Okay, this is my placement, and if you've been watching my videos, right, you know I like to mention when I'm talking about my personal placement. I think this is important because I just want to let you know that I have a particular bias and blind spot, right? I think when we're talking about our own placements, we have both a bias and we tend to think that it's either like a really good thing, or we see all the good things about it, or we really understand really deeply all the negative things about it. So we have a bias, right? But then we also have a blind spot where, I mean, especially with Lilith, right? Especially with your Lilith placement, I think this is a huge blind spot place, and honestly I don't actually know anybody else with Black Moon Lilith in Libra. I don't know, I've never, I guess except for some of the people I must have went to school with, right, who had birthdays right next to me. I guess some of them, but I've never looked at their charts, right? I don't know, I don't know any other people. So this is going to be, I'm going to try to make a few generalizations here, but I'm basically going to be sharing my experience with this, how it feels for me, what this is for me, right? So if you don't have Black Moon Lilith in Libra, then this is going to give you a case study of just one person of what this energy is like for me. And if you're a fellow Black Moon Lilith in Libra, or if you have other Liliths in Libra, or of course the 7th house, this all vibrates around that all kind of stuff, you'll know immediately if what I'm saying resonates for you or if it doesn't. So, and that's basically it. So there's so much to say on this, guys. I've actually been having a Lilith year, because at the time I'm filming this, South Node is transiting through Libra. So it's going to be hitting my, it hasn't gotten there yet, but it's already activating it. It's freeing all of that energy up, right? So I'm having a Lilith year. This is actually my Lilith hair. Last time I had a big transit to my Lilith, I cut bangs and had hair like this. I don't know. So where do I even start with this? So first, let me just kind of get some of the general stuff out of the way before I get into my really personal experiences with this. So let's think about Libra, right? This is themes of, or so I hear, right? So I am told. I actually have a challenging time talking about Libra energy because my only Libra is Black Moon Lilith. Oh, and I'll mention, for whatever it's worth, my Black Moon Lilith is in the 11th house. So that bleeds through here. It's probably going to be kind of hard for me to parse that out. I have trouble with Libra energy. It's interesting because I grew up in a household with plenty of really stable, developed Libra, and yet it is still a big blind spot for me, right? It's a big confusing thing for me. So when we think about one aspect of Libra being the legal system, laws, right, the justice system, that kind of thing, I've always had a very confused perspective on that, and I just kind of leave it to other people because I just kind of feel like, what even is justice? Like, does that really exist? The phrase bringing someone to justice and people like nobly seeking justice has always confused me, because to me, I'm just like, well, is that really justice or is that just revenge? Sometimes I have really wondered, like, is bringing someone to justice, is that ever justice or is it just revenge? Now, of course, I do understand that's my Lilith and Libra speaking. So I tend to just, I'm really confused about the entire legal system, the justice system, especially the criminal justice system, all of that kind of stuff. It's just, something about it just doesn't make sense to me. So if you've been watching my other Lilith videos, you know that Lilith gives us extreme reactivity, where we can either obsess about the topic or we can entirely reject the topic. So it's pretty obvious here that I'm falling into the category of rejecting and it's just like out of sheer confusion. It's just like, I just don't get it. There's just something like, it's like I'm just outside of this energy. That's what I feel like. I feel like I'm outside of it. Almost, I guess I can't really say I'm outside of the law, because I do generally follow the law and I do understand intellectually that laws help society function, but it is a confusing thing for me. I don't really get it the way people who are into it understand it, and I just tend to take a big step back. I don't, I mean, I was political in college, right? because that's what you do when you're in college. But for the most part, I'm not into politics or governance or even really having opinions about what laws should be passed, any of that. I'm just like, it feels like it's not my game, right? It just feels like it's not my game. I take a huge step back from that, and I just leave that to other people who seem to understand it much better than me. So that is a huge, that could be a whole thing, right? For some people, the Lilith and Libra thing, the Lilith and Libra thing could be really fixated about that. For me, I've just kind of entirely removed myself from it. And then there's the whole Libra is this thing about equality and balance, right? Equality and balance. And I think that is probably something like in general, in my general life, that I have actually obsessed about, like obsessed. I can get really, really, really obsessive about that. That wasn't fair. That's not fair. I'm not being treated fairly. It's not exactly fair. And honestly, part of this is because, like I said, I grew up in a very Libra emphasized household. So like me and my sister, we were raised to be like exactly the same in terms of what we were given. At 12 years old, I got, one of those 5-disc CD changers with the speakers on the shelf that everybody had in the 90s, right? I got that when I was 12 for Christmas. So my sister, of course, got the exact same one, 2.5 years later for Christmas when she was 12, right? It was that kind of thing. It was like this equal, always thing. And I think maybe that's had a contributing factor. Like I will be very sensitive in my life about like nickeling and diming, not necessarily about money, although I have done that when I'm really broke and I get really freaked out, like going like, that wasn't fair. Why did I have to pay more? I can't, that was like because I couldn't afford it, right? As long as I have enough money, I don't nickel and dime things, right? But I can kind of do that about like in relationships, right? I'm remembering with my ex-boyfriend who I lived with for 5 years. We were together for 8 years. We lived together for 5 years. When we lived together, I was like, and this was all me, right? It was coming from me. I was obsessive about divvying up the chores, right? The housework. Because I was like, it's not fair for me to have to do all the cleaning, right? So you're going to do half the cleaning. And even though he didn't really care about things being clean, right? So it was kind of like me putting that on him, but I would like insist and throw a big hissy fit if he didn't like take his turn cleaning the bathroom every other week, and everything. And I would like tally it up in my head about like, was that even? Was that fair? Was that exactly equal? And I think this is like, I've really learned that for me, it's like I took equality and made it toxic, right? I took equality and made it toxic because I was obsessed with it. And what I've gone a whole thing since then of learning, like, it doesn't have to be that like exact and that nickel and dimed and that divvied up like that. It's more of like feeling into the energy of over the long term. Holistically, it's more like holistic equality is what I have been learning. And I think that's been a really big thing for me in terms of my Lilith learning, dialing down my obsession with micromanaging equality and just feeling into over the years, over the long term, is this an equal feeling vibration, right? In relationships and stuff like that. So that has been a big thing for me. But okay, this is where I want to get away from the general stuff, and I'm going to share really my own personal stuff. So this is going to skew really just, this is about me now. And so a few things to keep in mind if you're looking at this as a case study of someone with Lilith in Libra in the 11th house. A few things for you to know is that my Lilith in Libra in the 11th house is opposite my Mars in Aries in the 5th. So I have this major push-pull on the Libra-Aries axis. And that has really shown up for me a lot in my life about I've always craved partnership, craved specifically a romantic partnership, right? Fun fact, guys, I've only had 2 partners, my husband and my ex-boyfriend. I have not been single since I was 16. So like I'm 34, right? I have like basically never been single in my adult life, because romantic partnership is this, it's like a big part of of my life, but at the same time, I've only had 2 partners, right? I have never dated. I don't understand dating. I would never even know how to go on a date with someone. Both of my partners I ended up with like through sheer destiny, right? It was not something that I ever sought, because I am actually extremely people avoidant. I am like one of the world's biggest recluses and introverts and antisocial people. Like I don't, that also bleeds into like my 11th, it's the 11th house, right? Where I don't understand the social system. I don't understand humanity, and I don't know how to interact. I have no social skills, like none of that, right? So it's interesting where I have this desire to be in a partnership that is kind of at odds with the rest of me. It is definitely at odds with Mars and Aries in the 5th. It is at odds with Scorpio rising, although, you know, Scorpio rising does seek intimate connection with others, right? But Scorpio rising is not exactly like a social butterfly type of energy, right? And I have a Capricorn stellium, so I have all of this very like independent, kind of intense energy that makes me really, really value independence, makes me not want to submit, right? It's like I don't want to ever submit. I never want to feel like I have this like, I used to get this feeling, right? I've mostly resolved this, so I don't really feel this much anymore, but I used to get this feeling. I'd be really triggered if I felt like someone was trying to like, the expression is make you pass under the yoke, not egg yolk, but like, this is like a phrase they used to use in ancient Rome where like the defeated army, if they wanted to extra humiliate the army, they would like, you know, like the yoke that they would use to like carry water, like on your shoulders, like that kind of thing. They would make you pass under the yoke, and like YOKE. And that was to like further humiliate people. And so if I've ever felt in my life like someone is trying to like really grind me down into the dirt, I will be massively massively triggered, because I feel like my individuality is being threatened, because Lilith and Libra, right? We can become obsessed with partnership, which I don't know if I've been obsessed with partnership. I've actually been very lucky in partnership. I've always had, I mean, I don't have friends. I don't have like a friends group. I never have, but I've always had one person in my life, right? Always had one person, whether, you know, it was my sister or my best friend or my boyfriend or my husband, right? I've always got that one person. Always got that one person. So for Libra, it doesn't have to be romantic partnership. It's any partnership. More astrological details, but I will share those in a sec. We can obsess about partnership, or we can completely reject it, right? We can completely reject it. And I've done both. I've done both. I actually remember my husband and I, the night after we hooked up for the first time, when we were friends with benefits, we went out for lunch the next afternoon, and we had this big long conversation about how we were never going to be in a relationship again. We were never going to fall in love, that was insane. I don't need anybody, right? Like, it was this whole thing. We were both totally on board with, we were just going to be completely independent individuals. And I really was like, that was what I meant. That is really what I meant at that moment. But we were like engaged like a month later and married a year later. So that ended up going from like rejection to like all in really fast, right? Really fast. So anyway, my point is this whole thing about this back and forth between partnership and individuation for me is like really emphasized, because it's my Lilith is opposite Mars and Aries. So big whole back and forth thing on that. And this is where, you know, there's no way for me to talk about this without talking more about my marriage, right? It's just impossible. And a few astrological tidbits for those of you who are interested on this. So 7th house, right, is also related to Libra. And I have Jupiter in Taurus in the 7th, which I think has been a really, like, it is like the best thing about my chart. It is such a blessing, right? It's such a blessing. Jupiter in Taurus in the 7th house, that I think is part of what has helped me have benevolent partnerships in my life, right? I've, you know, good friends, good sisters, good partners. That has been my experience. And I think that is largely because of Jupiter in Taurus in the 7th. And, you know, stereotypical, like traditional astrology, they will say that in a woman's chart, your Jupiter placement shows your husband. Fun fact, guys, my Jupiter in Taurus in the 7th, my husband's sun, this is the kind of shit you can't make up, is conjunct my 7th house Jupiter. He's like, it's bizarre, right? So that is like, my marriage is involved in this, and let me explain more about how this is involved with my Lilith. So my Lilith, 10 degrees Libra, Interestingly, my parents' wedding day, the sun was at 10 degrees Libra. So kind of strange. And then, interestingly, my wedding chart, the ascendant was exactly at 10 degrees Libra. None of this was planned. I was an atheist when I got married. I didn't know anything about any of this. So my parents' wedding chart, the sun is conjunct my Lilith. My wedding chart, the ascendant, and Mars in Libra is conjunct the ascendant. Mars in Libra is also at 10 degrees of Libra, conjunct the ascendant, and that is conjunct my Lilith, which is crazy. And while I'm talking about this, I just have to mention this, that if you can follow this, right? If you can follow this, if you can picture charts in your head, this will make sense. Also in our wedding chart, North Node in Libra in the first house, right? So there is, again, that is a doubling of the Libra-Aries axis. North Node in Libra in the first, right? And then in our composite chart, we are North Node in Aries in the seventh. Again, a doubling of the Aries-Libra axis. So it's like, this is the kind of stuff, when I was first getting into astrology, this is actually part of what made me understand like how real this is, because you can't make this shit up, right? You just can't. It's absolutely bizarre. So that's why it's hard for me to talk about my Lilith in Libra, or even Libra in general, without talking about my marriage, because it's entirely entangled with that for me. And essentially for me to get married was, and this is a strange thing for Lilith, right? For Lilith in Libra, because the basic energy of Lilith is that she, you know, just think about the basic myth, the very, very basics of the myth is that she was made for Adam, or she was made as an equal to Adam, right? But she would not submit. She was like, I'm not gonna, you know, be your second. I'm not gonna be lesser than you. And she ran off and, you know, rejected marriage, rejected partnership, ran off into the void and spawned a bunch of demons and whatever, right? So the basic thing about Lilith is that she rejects marriage, right? But that's why it's so fascinating to me that my Lilith in Libra, right? Because Libra is marriage and partnership. It's a very strange place to have your Lilith, because Lilith wants to reject marriage and partnership, at least on some levels, right? But when she's in Libra, she can become almost obsessed with partnership, or it can become a big, big, big part of her life. And for me, with this whole thing to do with my, this whole thing to do with my marriage in the Libra-Aries axis, it's about getting up into the higher frequencies of all of this. Because honestly, funny story, right? Before I got married, I didn't actually understand like the energetics of marriage. I honestly didn't really think it was that big of a deal. I didn't understand that it actually meant something, as weird as that sounds, right? Let me explain, because I was in an 8-year partnership with my ex, and, you know, we were never married, but we lived together. You know, we shared all of our stuff and all of that. We still had separate finances mostly, but we split everything 50-50 and blah, 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 blah. I thought that was as good as it got, right? I thought that was like, that's an adult, committed, long-term relationship. I thought marriage was the same thing. So I get married, and as time goes by, I start to understand that marriage itself it like becomes an entity, right? You, the couple, you, the married couple, become your own entity as two beings, right? It's like a third thing is being created here. And it's really funny for me to think now, because it's like 10 years, you know, I got married like 10 years ago. So it's really funny for me to think now, because this is all ancient history for me. These are all lessons I learned, you know, 10, 9, 8 years ago. I felt really threatened for a little bit. I felt threatened. I felt like blending into my marriage, blending into my partnership was like threatening to me personally. And I do think that has to do with Lilith in Libra and my Mars in Aries, right? This thing. I felt like I was being dissolved. I felt like my individuality was being threatened. And I just had to go through this whole process of understanding that all of that I was thinking, all of my fears about that, it was just complete bullshit. It was just complete bullshit. None of that was happening. None of that was real. I was just having like insane ego fears, right? My ego was afraid of it. My ego felt threatened by partnership. My ego felt threatened by marriage. And what I have learned, you know, through my marriage just becoming better and better and better and better and better as every year, right? More deeply in love, coming into more like just deeper and deeper levels of understanding and connection and spiritual connection, emotional connection, intellectual connection, sexual connection. The sex just keeps getting better, guys. Okay. And all of that, I now understand that to be truly, truly married, right? There is this kind of, it might feel like you're surrendering the self, but I think that is just an illusion. That's just an illusion. It might feel that way, right? And the feeling can be very real, I know, but that's just an illusion. It's just an illusion but I do think it requires the willingness to surrender the self, the willingness to surrender the self without actually compromising the self. This is where I think this whole Libra Aries thing gets really complicated, and I don't know if I'm going to do it justice, but I'm going to try. So I am not talking about like dissolving yourself and becoming a pile of goo and just like rolling over to your partner. I am most emphatically not talking about that, because what does that create, right? If you have one person who just becomes submissive in the relationship or who just dissolves themselves, then you're not in a relationship, you're in like a hierarchical thing, and that's not what anybody wants. I'm also not talking about both individuals like dissolving themselves and kind of glomming together, because then you get a codependent relationship. And I know a lot of people in that, right? A lot of people in that where both people are they're codependent on each other and they're all mixed up, and problem with that is too much individuality has been dissolved. I would want to kind of differentiate here between the willingness to surrender the individual self in order to experience a true marriage, and just like dissolving and effacing yourself, which is not what we want. Or being in a relationship because you need something from the other person and like you can't really function, right? When two people depend on each other to function and it's this codependent thing, that doesn't make like a strong relationship, and it doesn't make strong individuals. So the thing here is to get to the place where both individuals are fully empowered, right? And fully individuated and fully confident and capable in their own selves. And then when you take those two individuals and marry them together, then the marriage can create something that is so much greater than the sum of its parts. So much greater than the sum of its parts. I made a video about this, I think 2 years ago. It was called like 1 + 1 = 11. Some really silly video. Like it was like a 2-minute thing I posted like on Halloween or something. It's coming through around the same time of year, right? So 1 + 1 = 2. That would be like maybe a middle vibrational relationship, right? Where you take one person, you take another person, you put them together, you get 2, right? Like the frequency of 2. What if you take one individual and another individual and you put them right next to each other and you marry them together? Well, now you get 11, right? That is the closest I can come to expressing this, right? Creating like a higher frequency relationship, a higher frequency marriage where both individuals are, this is how I think we balance out the Aries-Libra axis, where both individuals, Aries, are fully empowered in their own selves, but then they come together in partnership, in equal balanced partnership, but knowing that equal balanced partnership is not a static, rigid thing with rules. It is a moving thing. The scales might go up and down. The energy might go back and forth. Sometimes one partner doing, giving, being more. Sometimes the other partner doing, giving, being more. But over the holistic experience of the relationship, it being a harmonious balance, right? And that's how you be an 11, like that's how your marriage, it becomes an 11, right? And it begins with the individual and then it becomes greater within the partnership. And it's really this feeling of, there has to be some willingness, like I'm saying, to surrender the self into the marriage, because it's like, I care about myself, I care about my husband, I also care about the marriage as a thing, right? Our relationship as a thing in and of itself. And my husband and I, we talk about this a lot, because we will each individually and we will each together, right, collectively, we will make decisions for the health of the relationship, for the health of the marriage. Sometimes that means that one individual gives something up right, for a little while. Sometimes it means that somebody does more, right? Sometimes, you know, there's like a energy moving around, but it's like, of course, so, you know, you're taking care of yourself, you're taking care of your partner, but you also have to take care of the marriage. The marriage is a third thing. And, you know, for us, the marriage has become something that is more important. I want to say it's more important than either individual. I don't know if that really expresses what I mean, though. It's like I'm saying, this is tricky, right? This is very tricky to articulate because like I'm saying, it's very important. In order for any of this to work, you don't sacrifice the individual. Otherwise, there's like no foundation of a relationship, right? If either individual is sacrificed, I guess I'll just say that's what it sometimes feels like, right? Putting the relationship first, putting the marriage first. Not necessarily that it's more important than either individual, but there is this feeling here of putting the relationship first and making decisions for the health of the relationship, because that is where we exist. That is our container. And for us, it is the single, I mean, except for, you know, raising our kid, which is, of course, something we do within the context of our marriage. So, you know, really at the end of the day, our marriage is the foundation of everything we do in our lives, and it's the most important thing we have going. So, you know, and it triggers people. It triggers the shit out of people. I mean, some people, right? It's funny when we're together, you know, when we meet people and stuff, because my husband's really extroverted and outgoing. He's the exact opposite of me. But we have like an energy, and people find us very compelling, and we can be very popular, like as a couple, like as a dynamic duo, right? And I know it's because people are attracted to the energy of our marriage, right? The energy of our connection with each other and how we are together and just what we have like in our marriage. People are attracted to that, and people find it very compelling. But at the same time, some people also find it very, very triggering, and they find it threatening, right? People find it very triggering and they find it threatening, which I guess is a whole other topic, but that is what it is, right? Is what it is. So, I don't know. So this has been pretty rambling. I've kind of gone all over the place, but I think this is the best I can do to give you a little bit of a snapshot, a little bit of a case study into my experience of being a Lilith in Libra in the 11th house, but 11th house stuff I'll talk about when I get to the Aquarius video. Yeah, but of course for me it's complicated, right? Because as you could tell, it's not just Lilith and Libra for me, it's also my Mars and Aries, it's also my Jupiter in the 7th house, it's also my marriage chart, even my parents' marriage chart. It's like, my Lilith is, you know, got her little fingers into everything and has played a huge part of my life in the background, and it's taken me until this year to really understand how complex and intricate it is, and I'm sure in 10 years I could make another video and update you on this. So I'm going to leave you guys there. Talk to you later. Bye.